Phone yangu ini ndinogana ndakadzima. They say stressless chimbochila. In the silence ndichidzidza. Verse by verse chichipinda. Ever since Mugabe zvinhu still zvakaoma. Asi ndaimwari mationa. Mumoyo mangu ndareme.
Off. Hello, welcome. It has been a long time. It feels like it has been a very, very long time since I last joined you. I have been sick. I have been unwell. My health has been up here, then down here, and it has been all a mess. But I have missed you guys. Hopefully you're all well. And I am excited about this topic. I had to come out of hiding just for this because, listen, this was the interview I didn't know I needed. So we're going to go into it. I am going to be sharing my screen. I'm going to be showing you. I've got here the interview itself, and I'm going to be showing you, and you can go ahead and watch it yourself as well. I am going to share the link in the chat just now. Please do let me know where you're joining in from. Interact with me. Let me know how you are doing in the chat. Be sure to, just comment your thoughts. I was just looking on the side, but just be sure to comment your thoughts and just let me know, what are you thinking? What are you thinking about what is going on right now? Because I'll be quite honest, I don't know how to feel. I don't know what to think, but let's dive right in. So for those that don't know, for those that have not seen, President Putin, the president of Russia, he had an interview with a journalist called Tucker Carlson. And this interview was somewhat controversial because there was rumors that the EU wanted to sanction Tucker Carlson for actually going out and doing this interview with Putin. Putin hasn't actually done an interview of this kind since the war started. I don't think he's one shy from the media. He's definitely done interviews before. He definitely is very adamant about his language. And he speaks in Russian when he does his interviews, and he has a translator who I think is very, very good, by the way. So yes, we are going to dive right into it. The way that they've done it, they've given sections. So before I kind of, share the different sections that what I would say are key for me and I want to discuss today, just to give you a bit of backdrop of how the interview starts. So the interview has only been out for less than 24 hours. I was minding my own business yesterday, watching Candice Owens, and she mentioned that, the whole thing about the sanctions with Tucker Carlson, did some research and found actually it was going to be out in a few hours, but because of American time, I was sleeping. So by the time I woke up this morning, this interview was out. It was almost 3 hours long. I watched every single minute of it. I even repeated some parts. And then I went and I saw how other media platforms were twisting what was going on in that interview. So a bit of backdrop. Tucker Carlson introduces the interview, and he basically also just puts a disclaimer that for at least half an hour of this interview, Putin is pretty much just giving a history lesson. He goes deep into talking about getting the people to really understand, well, why is he even interested in Ukraine? Because that's the whole foundation of the conversation, him talking about the war. Why is he even interested in Ukraine? So he starts in the 13th century. I really don't know why. We were patient with him for 30 minutes and he went deep into it. But I understood by the time we got halfway through the interview, I understood why he needed to go through that history. Then he goes, I think really he states that everything really starts in 2014. And where I want to start from the interview is Tucker Carlson asking him, well, what made him then move into Ukraine? So let's start there. Right. Okay. So I am going to just quickly share my screen here so that you can see. Okay. Okay, not the not the screen I wanted to share there, so bear with me. 2 seconds. Oh, here we are. Right, let's share that. So this is the interview. You can go and watch it. I've put the link in the chat for you, wherever you're watching and tuning in from. Do have a look on it. So like I said, they break it down into sections, and we are pretty much going to start 40 minutes in. So let's do that.
Trigger for you? What was the moment where you decided you had to do this?
Спровоцировал конфликт изначально.
Initially, it was the coup in Ukraine that provoked the conflict. By the way, back then the representatives of 3 European countries, Germany, Poland, and France, arrived. They were the guarantors of the signed agreement between the government of Yanukovych and the opposition. They signed it as guarantors. Despite that, the opposition committed a coup, and all these countries pretended that they didn't remember that they were guarantors of the peaceful settlement. They just threw it in the stove right away, and nobody recalls that. I don't know if the US know anything about the agreement between the opposition and the authorities, and its 3 guarantors who, instead of bringing this whole situation back in the political field, supported the coup. Although it was meaningless, believe me, because President Yanukovych agreed to all conditions. He was ready to hold an early election, which he had no chance of winning, frankly speaking. Everyone knew that. Then why the coup? Why the victims? Why threatening Crimea? Why launching an operation in Donbass? This I do not understand. That is exactly what the miscalculation is. CIA did its job to complete the coup. I think one of the deputy secretaries of state said that it cost a large sum of money, almost 5 billion. But the political mistake was colossal. Why would they have to do that? All this could have been done legally, without victims, without military action, without losing Crimea. We would have never considered to even lift a finger if it hadn't been.
So I was on mute. So just to give you a bit of context, again, the context comes from what he was speaking about before. When he's talking about a coup, he's basically saying that the current president that was placed in Ukraine, that is in Ukraine, was placed there by the US as a way of them trying, or NATO, them trying to gain power over Ukraine and then in turn gain power over Russia. So he is claiming, allegedly, that the US government is responsible for placing this president, and they're actually the ones that are running the country. So whenever he's talking, you see across the interview, whenever he's talking about the war, he's not actually talking about he's fighting with Ukraine. He's saying, well, how can I fight Ukraine? Because to him, Ukraine is a part of Russia, according to history. And he was breaking down the history that that's their land. But he wasn't super interested in gaining. They had a good agreement with Ukraine until the US came in and then messed some things up. So when he's talking about the coup, that's what he's talking about. So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to be breaking this down, and then at some point we'll talk overall in terms of what he talks about. But I think some of the things that he mentions now are really important for us to have a look at some more. Okay. Let me share that again. I realized I was still actually sharing. Technology.
Because we agreed with the fact that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, our borders should be along the borders of former Union's republics. We agreed to that. But we never agreed to NATO's expansion, and moreover, we never agreed that Ukraine would be in NATO.
без всяких разговоров с нами.
We did not agree to NATO bases there without any discussion with us. For decades, we kept asking, don't do this, don't do that.
В последних событиях. Ну, во-первых,
And what triggered the latest events?
руководство Украины заявило,
Firstly, the current Ukrainian leadership declared that it would not implement the Minsk agreements, which had been signed, as you know, after the events of 2014 in Minsk, where the plan of peaceful settlement in Donbass was set forth.
нет, руководство,
But no, the current Ukrainian leadership, foreign minister, all other officials, and then president himself said that they don't like anything about the Minsk agreements.
иными словами, исполнять не собираются.
In other words, they were not going to implement it.
Прямо сказали, что подписывали уже
A year or a year and a half ago, former leaders of Germany and France said openly to the whole world
это соглашение Минска.
that they indeed signed the Minsk agreements, but they never intended to implement them. They simply led us by the nose.
Was there anyone for you to talk to? Did you call a U.S. President, Secretary of State, and say, if you keep militarizing Ukraine with NATO forces, this is going to be we're going to act?
Мы постоянно об этом говорили. Мы постоянно об этом говорили. Мы обращались
We talked about this all the time. We addressed the United States and European countries' leadership to stop these developments immediately, to implement the Minsk agreements. Frankly speaking, I didn't know how we were going to do this, but I was ready to implement them. These agreements were complicated for Ukraine. They included lots of elements of those Donbass territories' independence. That's true. However, I was absolutely confident, and I'm saying this to you now. I honestly believe that if we managed to convince the residents of Donbass, and we had to work hard to convince them to return to the Ukrainian statehood, then gradually the wounds would start to heal. When this part of territory reintegrated itself into common social environment, when the pensions and social benefits were paid again, all the pieces would gradually fall into place. No, nobody wanted that. Everybody wanted to resolve the issue by military force only. But we could not let that happen. And the situation got to the point when the Ukrainian side announced, no, we will not do anything. They also started preparing for military action. It was they who started the war in 2014. Our goal is to stop this war. And we did not start this war in 2022. This is an attempt to stop it.
Do you think you've stopped it now? I mean, have you achieved your aims?
No, we haven't achieved our aims yet, because one of them is denazification. This means the prohibition of all kinds of neo-Nazi movements. This is one of the problems that we discussed during the negotiation process, which ended in Istanbul early this year. And it was not our initiative, because we were told by the Europeans, in particular, that it was necessary to create conditions for the final signing of the documents. My counterparts in France and Germany said, how can you imagine them signing a treaty with a gun to their heads? The troops should be pulled back from Kiev. I said, all right. We withdrew the troops from Kiev. As soon as we pulled back our troops from Kiev, our Ukrainian negotiators immediately threw all our agreements reached in Istanbul into the bin and got prepared for a long-standing armed confrontation with the help of the United States and its satellites in Europe. That is how the situation has developed, and that is how it looks now.
But what is, pardon my ignorance,
What was just said there is just... So Putin is saying, right? He is saying that they came to an agreement in Istanbul, and they were about to finalize it, but he was asked to pull his troops, because how can you sign you know, how can you sign this if you're threatening us? Like, pull back and we'll sign, we'll finalize. As soon as he pulled back, they came with their military, with the help of NATO, well, the help of NATO, US government, and the European satellites. I don't know what that means. But why? Why? That's the question that we should be asking. Why would they have an interest in that if he's willing to settle? And they've always, I think media has always painted this picture that, oh, Putin doesn't want to settle. He doesn't want to settle this conflict. But hearing this from him, of course, again, allegedly, this is his side of the story. There's always two sides of the story. They've given their side. We've never really heard from his side. But what his side is saying is completely opposing what we've been hearing all along. And it gets you to really wonder. And I was thinking, okay, you know, as Africans, we complain a lot about some of the corruption that we experience, and that is right in front of our eyes and we can see it. But how about this corruption that actually has been so covert that we just haven't seen, we just haven't been able to see the truth until maybe this point. So I am really interested to see where this is going to continue going. Okay, let me share again. Let me see where we're at now. I'm actually going to skip because it's very long. He goes into a lot of detail, but I want to touch on some points as well. And this is all on the on Tucker Carlson's website. Be sure to go and have a look at the whole interview. Don't believe just what the news is telling you, what you're seeing the headlines saying, because the headlines already are just, don't look at the headlines. They're not being so accurate. They are claiming that he wants to basically cause world war, and that is not really what he's saying. So, oh. Okay, so it seems that, oh. It seems we have been stopped. It seems we have been cut off by the neck. Oh gosh.